They are encouraging women and girls across the country to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
안녕하세요.
By
매일매일
ensuring that they are
운동하기를
not just
실천하고 있는
represented, but are also
동판
empowered to thrive across all
왕코입니다.
sectors. Egypt has demonstrated their commitment to investing in the country's youth
오늘은
and in the mission to
4월
achieve sustainable development
오늘
goals.
며칠이지? 4월 10, 16 어쨌든 일요일 17일 4월 17일 일요일입니다. 완전한 봄이에요. 완전한 봄. 운동하겠습니다.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels, connected to your world.
I'm Phil Black in Lviv, Western Ukraine, and this is CNN.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm John Voss, live in Lviv, Ukraine. The Russian military has issued an ultimatum to all Ukrainian fighters in Mariupol. Lay down their weapons, leave the city, effective immediately. They've been given until 1 p.m. local time to comply. That's less than 6 hours from now. Russia's defense ministry also claiming it has shot down a Ukrainian transport plane carrying military aid from the west. This supposedly happened near Odessa in the south, but there's been no confirmation. Despite that claim, the US says the first shipment of heavy weapons has now arrived in country ahead of a renewed Russian offensive expected at any time. This shipment includes 18 howitzer cannons and 40,000 artillery rounds, but that may only last a few days if Russia launches another offensive. The White House now scrambling to secure more ammunition and get it to Ukraine as soon as possible. Since this war began, tens of thousands of Ukrainians have reportedly been taken from their homes and their families and relocated to Russia or Russian-held territory. One of them is a young girl from Mariupol. She was taken by Russian troops as her family was trying to flee. Now, she's been featured in a propaganda Russian video. CNN's Phil Black has more.
It's almost hard to comprehend. This was Mariupol, not long ago, when its people knew safety and happiness. The girl in pink is Kira Obedinska, joyful, loved, 12 years old. This is Kira after the Russians came, orphaned, injured, alone in a Russian-controlled hospital. Russian media released this video showing Kira in Donetsk, the capital of a Moscow-backed separatist region in Ukraine's east. It shows her telling some of her story, why she fled Mariupol.
И не попадали в разные дома.
There was a lot of shooting, she says. Our building was hit. So was her father. Yevgeny Obedinsky, a former captain of Ukraine's national water polo team, was shot from a distance and killed as Russian forces fought their way into Mariupol on March 17. Days later, Kira, some neighbors, her father's girlfriend, tried to flee the city on foot. But someone stepped on a mine and Kira was injured in the blast.
Чуть-чуть только.
Russian soldiers then took her to Donetsk.
The Russian military which killed your son now has your granddaughter.
Kira's grandfather, Alexander, tells me her mother died when she was a baby. Now she's watched her father die. She misses her remaining family and she wants to return to him. Alexander is scared he may never see Kira again. He says an official from the breakaway government in Donetsk phoned and invited him to travel there to claim her. That is impossible because of the war. And when Alexander spoke to the hospital, he says he was told Kira will eventually be sent to an orphanage in Russia.
Документы у них забрали.
They took her documents, he says, and said they'll provide new ones when they send her into Russia. The Russian government has said it's helped move at least 60,000 Ukrainian people to safety across the Russian border. The Ukrainian government has said around 40,000 have been relocated against their will, describing it as abduction and forced deportation. The Russian media video shows Kira talking happily about how she's sometimes allowed to call her grandfather.
Сегодня мы с ним разговаривали.
I called him today, she says. I'll also call him in the evening.
Очень серьезная слава.
A Russian TV presenter called the video proof Kira wasn't abducted, proof of yet another Ukrainian fake.
Украинских фейков.
Kira also sometimes sends her grandfather audio messages, like this one.
Но только не плакайте и не нервничайте, ладно?
She first tells him not to cry, but she can't stop her own tears.
Я хочу плакать. Почему-то я так давно вас не видела, что уж плакать хочется.
I haven't seen you for so long. I want to cry, she says. The voice of a young girl who has lost her family, her home, her freedom, all to Russia's war. Phil Black, CNN, Lviv, Ukraine.
I'll have more from Lviv at the top of the hour. Let's get back to Michael in Atlanta. That is just one of the most horrendous stories, heartbreaking stories I think I've heard.
Yeah, and the one closer the other day with that old lady who eventually they got out to a care home as well. It's just, it's countless. It's story after story of just horrible things happening to people, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it never ends, it seems.
All right, John Vors there in Lviv. We'll be back with you a little later, John. Thanks for that. Meanwhile, we're following news of another high-ranking Russian military leader killed in Ukraine. The St. Petersburg mayor's office says Major General Vladimir Frolov was killed this week. He was reportedly a deputy commander of Russia's 8th Army. The mayor claimed the general died in battle with what he called Ukrainian nationalists. CNN could not confirm the circumstances of Frolov's death, but he would be among several top Russian officers believed killed during Russia's invasion of Ukraine. All right, I'd like to bring in Douglas London now. He's a retired US senior CIA operations officer and adjunct associate professor with Georgetown University's Center for Security Studies and the author of The Recruiter, Spying and the Lost Art of American Intelligence. Good to see you again, Doug, joining us there from Virginia. You wrote a piece in foreignaffairs.com related very much to your area of expertise, the intel world, and raised the issue of what more America could do covertly to undermine the Kremlin. Give us a couple of examples.
Well, I would expect the CIA would be continuing, probably expanding the training and support it's likely been providing since the Russians invaded in 2014. But the agency has some unique abilities and such that include access to covert supply lines, to foreign sourced weapons, and also the ability to provide targeting support and actionable intelligence that the United States Department of Defense might not be able to do. But there's also a lot of room to accelerate. The biggest vulnerabilities that Putin probably considers he has are his client states, Belarus, Chechnya, Kazakhstan, all of which have been subject to long periods of unrest. It wasn't that long ago there were hundreds of thousands of people protesting in Belarus. The agency certainly could reach out to opposition elements. There's already Ukrainian forces that are made up of Belarusian troops. There are also Chechens that are fighting there on the side of Ukraine. So there's ample opportunity to identify those that we could help to organize, provide intelligence, and ratchet that up even to the point of uprisings if possible. But that's something we could expand as well inside of Russia. The grassroots opposition is what Putin worries about, and just getting news into the country is something that the agency can do covertly. And you take it up another ratchet, there's certainly those in Putin's circle that the agency can reach out to who might be looking for life rafts or a way out of this. And even the appearance of some of those folks considering cooperating with the West would probably tap into Putin's paranoia and make him look over his shoulder, perhaps more so than on the Ukrainian battlefield.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we often talk of a leader's worldview. You've been busy because you also wrote a piece on CNN.com about that aspect of this conflict. What is Putin's worldview as it applies to what's happening in Ukraine?
Well, unfortunately, I wouldn't say he's irrational despite the horrors he's committing. He's a product of the Cold War era KGB. He looks at the world through a very black and white point of view. Might makes right for him. He's also been a preacher of the victimization of the Soviet Union's collapse, which he witnessed firsthand when he was serving in Dresda when the wall fell. So his practice of denial and deception is likely one that we're going to see him bark the loudest and make the biggest threats when he has the weakest hand. And he's going to look to find ways to wedge the allies, to try to decouple them if he can, to look for daylight, to identify what he might think is weakness. But one of the problems is, having been in power for so long and having built this cult of personality, he's somewhat drunk his own Kool-Aid. I think that's what led him to make some very serious miscalculations in launching the invasion in the first place.
Going back to the original point, Putin is many things, and he certainly won't want to ever appear like he's losing or backing down at all. But he's also, as you say, about self-preservation. How then does the West best evaluate at what point he's at on his pendulum and exploit that?
It's an important balance, and you make a really good point, which is why this bluster can't be dismissed entirely. But again, his reliance on denial and deception when he has a weaker hand would most likely lead him to make some of his biggest threats where he feels he's under strength. But I think there is reasonable concern. U.S. intelligence has been putting out declassified information suggesting the possible use of chemical weapons on the battlefield and perhaps even a tactical nuclear device. I think the latter would be less likely because it serves less of a military advantage and is more than likely to invite a NATO response. So balancing what we can see to be his bluster, his denial deception, and his real plans will have to be depending on good sources of intelligence, which to date, based on our declassified reporting being largely borne out by events, we seem to be doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, and last, I wanted to ask you this because we had a conversation with somebody else about this last night. If it comes to the point of peace talks, what are the risks of Ukrainian or Western compromise, which Putin would see as a weakness, any sort of compromise? How should any deal be handled given his record of taking advantage of compromise?
Well, Putin only understands consequences. He understands strength, and he would see concessions as